from the Bangladesh Petrochemical Company. Go ahead, please sit. Yes. Richard Yeboah from MDF Training and Consulting. And then on screen, we have a friend for us like Mahias Choudhury. We did many workshops together from the Broke. Do we have Mahina's online connected? All good? And Adam McNochief, co-founder and director of Solid Sustainable Oral Care. I hope we have the people online who hear us and everything is fine. So it was so interesting to meet our speakers online, and before we were having a chat together. We see data, for example, I started like getting informed a bit about Bangladesh. You see like you guys are far ahead compared to us, for example, on plastic, like compared to Europe, for example. We consume much more plastic. You were in 2002 the first to ban plastic sachet. We were reading with the team like some data, but still only 37% of the plastic gets recycled. You have only 55% of solid waste that gets recycled. There's a huge waste management problem we were seeing. And here we have the garbage man, Fahim. I would start with you, because if you saw like the garbage man bins, we are like starting from the collection problem here. Like, please tell us about your experience, the challenges you've been living, and the opportunities you see.
Okay, so it starts small. It's a huge problem, but the solution starts small. That goes segregation on source. So if we cannot segregate waste according to its type, organic, inorganic, in that paper, plastic, glass, if there is no segregation, then the whole process of recycling or value recovering gets very complicated in the process. And the engagement of individuals, community in this process is a must. We have to participate in this problem because the problem is created by us, the consumer. So there are multiple challenges in the waste management sector, starting with the lack of awareness, because we don't really think of waste after we're done using it. Where does it go? How does it end up? What is the composition? If I'm buying something, what type of material it consists? As a consumer, we're not much aware. So this is one. Second challenge is the supply chain. As you said, we banned plastic long back, but how to address the alternative of plastic, and also, let's say we put stop of the production, but how do we recycle or get rid of the plastic that is already in the market? The informal supply chain is absorbing all the leftovers after the 37%. Whatever is rest is consumed or absorbed by the informal sector, and then it leads up to compliant recyclers like Khadem Bhai, BPCL, and others. So they all depend on these informal supply chains. So there are challenges like this where even in these small enterprises, there is lack of finance, lack of compliance, awareness, etc. So yeah, mostly awareness, lack of finance, compliance, and addressing this as a sector and guideline for this sector. These are the broad line challenges that we are facing right now.
Thank you, Fahim. You were mentioning, right, the aspect of plastic, and now you have to address it as a sector. So I was thinking directly to you, Kadem, when we were discussing. I worked for Unilever, and one of the last projects that I was dealing when I had a mystical moment, I want to do only social business right now, it was changing all our portfolio into recycled plastic. And we couldn't find a supplier, or two suppliers, or three suppliers that could satisfy our capacity requests. So we couldn't change things like this because we didn't have, the sector was not ready yet. So how do you see, now I know Unilever is one of your clients, so how do you see it changing in Bangladesh and at world level?
Okay, thank you. My company, Bangladesh Petrochemical Company Limited, we do plastic waste management and recycling. I just take 1 minute to explain what we do.
Yes.
So I show some sample, then you can clearly understand.
Oh, you brought plastic in the building.
So suppose like you use this bottle, you consume, drink water, and then you discard it. So then, I mean, obviously the first stage is company like Garbage Man or the others who collect this, they have the collection network, they collect it. Then they send it to our factory in a bale condition or whatever way. So we get this after consumption. So what we do, we cut this bottle into small pieces and wash it up. It's called PET flakes. Many years ago, this used to be exported, all of them to China, but after the China Green Fence policy, the export stopped, so the local industry grew up. So we take this as an intermediate product from the bottle, it's flakes. Then from the flakes, we create this is called resin. This is the raw materials for plastic bottles and also polyester fiber. So polyester fiber and plastic bottle has the same raw materials. Polyester is a plastic. So we sell this to our customer like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or Unilever. So when they have this, they make a thing called preform. I'm just showing the stage. So once these preforms are made from this resin, it was blown into bottles. So I'll show you some of the, Maria was mentioning Unilever. Unilever is making this Lux body wash using this resin. In the past, they used to use 100% virgin material, which are made from the oil directly. But now they are switching the portfolio to recycled plastic. And I have one or two, like Coca-Cola is making Kinley water bottles from our 100% rPET. So this is in the market. And then the last sample is Pepsi is using our 100% rPET for the 250 ml Pepsi bottles. So then when you discard this after consumption, then the whole chain again start. So we have created a circular that you discard, we collect, then we produce the resin, again the bottles happen. This is a complete circular economy. So answer to Maria now, globally the brands that are using plastic, they make a huge commitment that by 2025, they will change their portfolio to 30% to recycled plastic and 50% by 2030. So that has created a huge opportunity all over the world. So top 10 brands like Coke, Pepsi, Danone, Unilever, they have committed to, they use about 10 million metric tons of plastic every year. So if you convert that value, it's almost a $20 billion. So they committed by 2025, some 2030, the 40% of the portfolio will be converted into recycled plastic. So that has opened up the big opportunity, and the similar target has been taken by local Pepsi. They committed 50%, Coca-Cola 50%, and Unilever 25%. And Danone is coming up, Nestle is coming up. So according to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, 350 large corporation has committed to reduce the use of virgin plastic and use alternative material, including the recycled plastic. So the market will be, I was told that about $77 billion by the year of 2028 for the recycled plastic. So it's a huge opportunity for globally and locally. And I just want to point out one thing. Globally today we discard 460 million tons of plastic, and in Bangladesh it's roughly between 1 to 1.2 million plastic annually dumped today. So I see that the problems already Shubho mentioned, but there is a huge opportunity that is coming up because all the brands are now committing to switching from oil-based plastic to the recycled plastic.
Yes. Thank you so much. Like you fill my heart to know that finally there's like some movement, because when I left the company, it was really like we were like in a crisis, like we want to change, but we couldn't. So great opportunities. I want to maybe like connect Adam, because I know you're facing also like a similar problem on plastic in oral care. So I wanted to, yes, I can look here, okay. So how are you experiencing the situation in New Zealand and with your Solid? You hear us, Adam? Yes. No, we don't hear you. You are muted. Yes. No. Let's see if that's the. Let's make a big applause for like these hybrid conferences, because it's always that's the fun of the live. We call it in Italian.
can't hear me now?
Yes. Hello, Adam.
Right, with my headphones. Kia ora everyone, kia ora koutou, ngau mai haere mai. My name is Adam from Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I'm very different to the speakers you've just had. We have a very, very small company, and so we are very much trying to solve things one plastic tube of toothpaste at a time. But in Aotearoa, we throw about 16 million toothpaste tubes into landfill every year. We're a small country, we don't have the facilities and capability to recycle them, and the only way you can recycle a toothpaste tube in New Zealand is to send it all the way to the USA. I believe, I don't have the exact figures, but I think there's something like 5 billion toothpaste tubes go to landfill every year around the world. So it's quite a huge problem, and I guess the way that we're trying to solve it is we put things in glass jars, little glass jars like this, and we really try to take the water out of toothpaste. So toothpaste is like a lot of commercial products like shampoo and soap, where it's largely water. About 40% of most toothpaste is water, and so if you take out the toothpaste, you can do really cool things. We make little toothpaste tablets, we make toothpaste powder, where you don't actually need water, and the toothpaste can absorb, react with the chemical in your mouth, saliva in your mouth, and become toothpaste. So we're a very small solution, but I guess for us, we see our contribution to climate action is around that behaviour change. So we don't think sustainable toothpaste will change the world, but we really think that our contribution can be getting people to think differently about the way they consume, and getting people to think differently about the role they have in climate action. And so, if you start really small, you can start to make a difference. And even though we're a small company, we've managed to save 35,000 toothpaste tubes going to landfill in the last couple of years. And it's only a small part, but if we all add it up, we can create a really cool impact as well. So I'm not sure if I answered your question exactly, but that's, I guess, our solution around plastic is to just not use it. So we don't use plastic in any of our products, which is actually really, really hard, because plastics are really, really useful and good solution. But for us, it's about how do we start to think about taking away that plastic and really designing out all the waste and designing out all the plastic right from the beginning. And so that design stage was really important for us to do that. And it's quite funny, just if you don't mind one last point, it's quite funny because, toothpaste in a jar is what we used to have in Aotearoa, New Zealand, about 80, 100 years ago. So we haven't bought a fancy new technology or a fancy new way of thinking. We've kind of just gone back to the past and done something that we used to do before the advent of mass plastic.
Right. Thank you so much, Adam. But you mentioned quite often that you're small, Like, keep believing in it, because everybody started small. So, toothpaste is also these tubes, that's also another big challenge that you find on the market. You don't find recycled tubes, because usually it's various materials inside, so it's very hard to recycle. So we really hope you are the best solution, also in that segment. There's a lot of programs for accelerating social business. We have also a Yunus Environment Hub, who is very much focused on plastic programs. So social businesses like yours are the ones that are inspiring us every day. We had a workshop on creativity yesterday, and creativity comes from different connections and different inspirations. So we focused a lot on plastic right now, but we have also here Richard and Maenas that are really doing amazing zero waste circular economy experiences in also other ways. I maybe touch base one moment with Maenas to have a bit more gender balance, and Maenas is a
Hi.
good friend of ours, because we have been doing some system thinking workshop to understand the fashion industry and how do we revolutionize it. And you have done a great job in Bangladesh, right, Maenas? You want to share something more about it?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank
I need
you.
to look here.
A very good morning to everybody, and to everyone in the panels as well. I'm really happy to share the stage with all of you here today. So I am Mahinaz and I'm founder of Broke. And what I have been doing is like I can really relate to what Adam said because it's about like small behavioral changes and we're starting really small. So my journey kind of started off right before the pandemic where I was like hosting clothes swapping events to kind of activate that idea of like wearing secondhand or not buying anything new, but rather like circulate the clothes amongst our friends and peers and that network. So it's about more about that community building, and really feel that that is what really drives changes eventually. Like when you bring people together under a common objective that people can relate to, and it's easier to do, changes can happen in a more organic manner, and that's what I was trying to do, like build more clothes swapping events, work with the youth, which is like work with school students, work with university students, because I feel like change starts at really young. It's easier to like mold and easier to have discussions and easier to like change behavioral patterns like when you're learning about things like from when you're at a younger age versus like when we are set in our own ways in our 30s or in our 40s. It's a little difficult. So I have been doing a lot of upcycling events, a lot of recycling workshops with universities such as like ULab. They have been like incredibly supportive with allowing their students to come forward and like engage in like say for example like natural dyeing workshops to like upcycle their old clothes and kind of give that a new life, and the process itself was like so much fun. Recently we did one with Sir John Wilson School with Sunbeams actually, with about like 250 students, which was one of the largest workshops that we were able to do. And if you can imagine that if you are having that conversation about upcycling with 250 students from now, the amount of snowball effect that it can happen within the community, within their friend circle, within their family, it's very powerful. At least it starts, the momentum has begun. And to my surprise, what I have learned is that kids nowadays, they're very aware, they're very informed, and they're eager to bring about a positive change within their community. And that was very hopeful for me and very inspiring as well. So what Broke essentially does is I collect a lot of dead stocks from garments factories, I collect secondhand clothes from friends and peers, and I upcycle them in my own designs. And the idea is that we turn trash to art and give the youth and the new generation voice of power with what they're wearing and make a statement with it that is different from what you can wear in fast fashion, because in fast fashion 50,000 people, 200 million people are wearing the same kind of clothes and you lose your identity. And with my brand, it's about reconnecting with yourself and bringing back that identity and that sense of empowerment and making a statement. If I could just like give you like a small example of some of the impact that I was able to make over the last 3 years would be I was able to save about 1,296,000 liters of water just by clothes swapping and upcycling t-shirts and jeans, because as you know, like it takes about like almost about like 10,000 liters of water to produce one jeans, right? And the amount of wastewater that it creates is incredible. Just in Bangladesh, about 56 billion liters of wastewater is produced from textile pollution. And if I put that into context, over 5 million people in Bangladesh do not have access to safe and clean hygienic water. So unless we start really thinking about the kind of consumer behavioral patterns that we are having, or what our impact of consumption is on our environment, I don't think we will be able to like really make that difference. So it's really important to like understand that every consumption has a very enormous impact within the community, not just on the ecosystem, but also on the people's quality of life. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mahenas. Thank you so much. And you really prove with your work like that you can change mindsets and like you can really create a lot of awareness on the all like system. And talking about systems, Richard has like local experience really on like waste with MDF. And when we were talking, you were like opening different scenarios of how to use waste. So like, please share your experience with us.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to give two examples, one related to e-waste and one related to fecal sludge management. And actually, I wanted to start from the effects of waste to the vulnerable groups. So like for the fecal sludge, we were actually engaged by the prison service in Ghana. The prison service had a prison that was once built for 500 inmates. But now, at this moment, at the male prison, there are 4,000 inmates. And the sanitation facilities were poor. So what happens is that when it rains, and in Ghana, they use septic tanks, the septic tanks was not maintained, and so it leaks. And during the leakage, it comes to a stream, and the stream leads to the water reservoir, drinking water reservoir of Greater Accra. So you can imagine the health implications. So we started with, okay, how can you make this type of problems a commercial viable solution which will be sustainable? So one of the things that we immediately did is that, okay, how can you set up a system, a fecal sludge management system, where you can reuse or create value. So one of the things that we are doing is collecting this fecal sludge, cleaning it, generating biogas and for electricity. Immediately you solve the problem for the vulnerable groups, as well as generating electricity, and also the byproduct could be used for composting, which again, for another vulnerable groups which are farmers, could really help them to move into using organic fertilizers rather than the inorganic fertilizers. And of course, many of you would know also the challenges of e-waste. If you are not well knowing how to manage it and maintain it, it creates a lot of health problems. So now we have set up a business, at least we supported a business that is now refurbishing these e-waste, and also develop training materials and trainings where we can help vulnerable groups to how to properly dismantle and dismantle the waste in a proper way without burning it and all those things. So for us, I think we also look at from bottom up to see how can you make it in such a way that those people that are not making use of the waste that is being produced, that it will also not have a negative effect on them. So I think that is where we see the circularity as a way of solving a lot of health issues, electricity issues, composting issues for the base of the pyramid. But I don't like calling it that. I really like the vulnerable groups that are actually not buying these products from the shops, but at the end of it, if we dispose of it, it has having an effect on them. So I think that is where we are really coming in and seeing, okay, how can you create businesses? And it becomes also inclusive because we create opportunities for them to also earn decent income, which again uplift also their situation.
And I find it very interesting because yesterday we were talking to Grameen Shakti, and we were like really discussing about new ways to create energy, since like the government, I heard like they put solar panels for free for the communities here. So that could be, for example, like maybe a way to create energy from waste. And another problem that was mentioned is the recycling of batteries, that it's getting very, very hard, especially lithium batteries. Here, do you do also projects in that sense on batteries?
Well,
focused?
I think that is the starting point. I think now, you know, I think we have been trained to think about waste, you know, so that waste exists. And I think now the motion is that actually there's no waste. So I think step by step, you look from sector to sector, and you then now look at, okay, how can we, one side in terms of designing and producing new things that will have minimum waste, but I think the other side that we also have to tackle is, okay, now we have a lot of waste in the system, how do you make sure that you could better make use of it and actually do not create waste? And I think batteries, you know, it is now that we are now all moving into, let's say, electric cars and all those things. So batteries are becoming issues. So now I think it is the right moment to think of, okay, how can we best make use of it, dispose of it, manage it properly, and recycle it properly in a circular economy way. So I think what is also needed in the whole enabling environment is to create in circular economy courses, translate, we talk about economy, capitalism, but then now we need to talk about circular economy. What does that mean, and what is the effect for us in human capital? What does it mean in terms of investment? What does it mean in terms of production, prices? People that are in the West, because I think the biggest challenge is that it has more effect on Southeast Asia and Africa. So how are people in the West willing to pay a premium or the right prices so that we can really come up with models that can also solve these waste challenges?
Yes, thank you so much. And always this, like you said, right, like now we need to think about circular economy. So really like it's not just anymore how do I recycle like a single thing, but it's really how everything is going to impact the whole like system in a circular way. I go back to another round of questions, and then if we have time, I would like maybe also in the audience, if you have questions, we're going to leave some time at the end. I go back to you, Fahim, because like Richard was saying, right, that you have new challenges every time, and you need to like just think about it in a systemic way, and are you going to then collect and introduce everything in the system. So maybe with you we can focus more on the circularity of the whole garbage man concept right now.
So, see, it's a management problem that we are seeing in the waste management. It's not much of a technical problem, because waste is a resource. If you fundamentally break it, you will see there is a use of the things that we're calling waste, has a use in different aspects and different industries. So the problem is in the management. Whatever the system we're designing, are we following up and managing that properly or not? So that is the challenge that I think it is all over. And how we are tackling that is, so we have been working in this sector for the last 4 years, and we started very small while we were trying to engage the households. We were collecting from them, we were composting the waste, the organic one, and then we are giving it to the rooftop gardeners for using in their urban garden. So that was one of our starting project in the beginning. Now we are focusing on the supply chain, where we are connecting the consumers, household level, organization level, even we are engaging the small, medium scale enterprises, the scrap dealers. We are giving them a process where they're getting enlisted, and we're buying from them at a much higher price from the market. So once we crack the supply chain, we can always, the reverse supply chain is a fundamental part of the circular economy. And brands like BPCL who are catering to Unilever is our gateway of collecting all these, and because we cannot do everything in-house. What we can do is we are trying to experiment with certain non-value items which has no value in the market. Let's say the wrappers, the MLPs, these sort of things. We are upcycling them, and we are trying to test the market fit if the consumers are ready to use these type of products or not. But the other mainstream items, we are relying on the existing manufacturers or the recyclers. But the awareness part and engaging the consumer part, that's where our focus is, where we can ask people to segregate, we can exchange knowledge about the segregation and seeing waste differently. The moment you see waste from a different perspective, when you see it as a resource, you keep it. You keep it, and there will be a schedule of collection, there will be a process of discarding all these. So we are basically trying to build that platform where we connect everyone in this gateway of circularity. This is one part of it. And also we develop projects, individual projects. Those are in partnership with different organizations, where we close the loop in that project. So we are doing one project in Thakurga where we are collecting waste from a certain area. In a market area, it's our rural setting, and we are collecting and we are making the compost there, and all the paper, plastic, glass that is collected in there, we are doing the market linkage. The compost that is made is used in the farm. So that's, we are not trying to solve the whole cycle at the same time, but we're trying to break it in component, and we're trying to expertise in certain elements. That's how we are trying to deal in garbage man right now.
That's extremely interesting. Thank you so much, Fahim. And also because you touched an important point, like when waste is seen as a resource and not just a waste, then its value is being recognized, and you can change mindsets, right? I think, I don't know what you all think, but at product level, and what you were saying, right, are we willing to pay the premium, because we still have a premium at the final product if we're using then recycled plastic or upcycled fashion, or like, I guess your amazing toothpaste jar is like maybe at a more premium price. So how do we then change the conception, and like what can we do to then like make this premium price be paid? Maybe I start with you.
I want to add something.
Yes.
Small. So when we decide a price of a product, we only see the production cost and the profit for the organization. But what we are missing out is the social cost and the environmental cost of it. When we produce something, when we go for a project, that project or that product has environmental and social aspects into it. So when we start taking account of these costs and then decide the price of a product, I think that's the way of putting the premium, or however you want to name it. But we have to acknowledge this cost in the process somehow. So
and that's a great point. So the question now is maybe Adam, how do you then create awareness on these social and environmental costs? And because like with the crisis, with like all this going on, of course, people are willing to pay less right now. So you have huge transfer, like people going towards cheaper products in general. So I'm asking you, Adam, and then maybe Mahinas as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. If anyone else knows, please let me know, because I don't think that we've necessarily solved it. But you're absolutely right. The externalities that we're really focused on, covering does add costs. We're carbon positive. We support a forest in New Zealand to have a native regenerating forest, and we have a jar return system that we take responsibility for, so that we take responsibility for our own waste, and all of this stuff adds up. And I think with oral care, it's generally seen as like, it's priced like a commodity. It's cheap. You can buy toothpaste in New Zealand anyway, like really, really cheap. And so it's a big shift to think differently about the way we brush our teeth, and to value products like toothpaste differently. I don't really know the answer, but I think it's a mix of example and self-interest, I think. And so the self-interest for us is that if you look after your teeth well, you will spend less when you go to the dentist. If you buy cheap toothpaste, you can get bad oral health outcomes, right? So there's some self-interest in looking after your teeth and really thinking about your oral care slightly differently. But I think it's a really slow process of getting people thinking differently about the way they consume things. What we've found as just a little brand in New Zealand is about building that community and getting your customers to have them be part of the solution as well. And so what I'm finding is that we're moving away from like kind of passive consumption of, I'm going to buy this product because it's slightly better, to kind of like an active consumption. And so like for us, when our customers use our toothpaste and they either return their jar and we use it again, or they go to a shop and they can refill their toothpaste in store or refill their toothpaste tablets in store, that's a more circular model, but it also makes those people feel like they're part of the solution and that they're contributing to climate action. And that's a really good feeling. People feel good when they feel like they're making a small step of change. And so, they'll go home and they'll tell their friends and family about it. They'll talk about it on social media. And so slowly and slowly and slowly, we start to build up a community of people who want to do things differently. How you do it at scale and how you do it faster, that's what we're trying to work out, and that's what I don't know. But that's our experience so far.
Thank you. Mahinas, how do you answer to that as well?
I think it's a question that we're all trying to like strive towards, especially like in upcycling fabric. Like when you're considering like the environmental cost and the social cost and the labor cost, which I try to strive towards striking a balance between what is the market rates of how much to pay versus like the amount of hard work that they're putting into it. So when you're taking all of these costs into consideration, the price of the products does increase. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges as an upcycler in being a very small brand to minimize cost. And also encourage people to like buy sustainable products or go for upcycling rather than something that you can buy for like only like $1 or like $10 and you can constantly like keep replacing it because it's so cheap. And especially like in Bangladesh, like clothing is so cheap, right? Us being the second largest manufacturing country in the world, we constantly feel that like it's interesting because we've had a very sustainable lifestyle or a culture as a nation, as part of the subcontinent. Even with like plastic or like other metals and stuff, Bangladesh people, we constantly recycle stuff. We use it for like we have a very circular model in like whatever waste you can think of. But when it comes to like fashion or like consumer products, like because behaviors have so rapidly changed over the last 20 years, we just think that everything is disposable, right? So I feel that with Broke, what we try to do is like we try to put the cost of the clothing, incorporating like all of the other damage costs, the environmental cost, the social cost there, so that people understand that how much is being put behind making this one product. But when you think about it, from a consumer point of view, like generally people don't care. People don't care about being sustainable. People don't care about, like these kind of habits. So how do we change that narrative is going to be a very long journey for all of us who are playing individual roles in this community. Like all of the panelists who are here with me today, I feel that they can all kind of understand that we all have to play that role to kind of change that narrative and work with more community members, work with different kinds of groups and not just the similar minded group. What I constantly struggle with that is with Broke is that the consumers that for example, like follow my pages or orders from my pages, they are already in a transformed behavior, or at least they understand a little bit better about the circularity and they want to kind of support that. But if I want to bring in a group of consumers who are not avid fast fashion consumers, then I need to a bubble. And I think that is only possible when you work collaboratively, when you work with like different kinds of people who are part of the panelists over here today, and community members and institutions who would allow you to get access to a wider range of diverse group of people to like have these conversations and slowly bring about that change. So I think that's my only solution right now.
So collective action to change the narrative. Before we get into the questions, how do you feel about these aspects as well? Like creating this, are you experiencing like this collective action in like your work as well? Like in selling like a more premium product with companies in this sphere of action?
This is the most challenging part, I guess. What we have seen that there is a huge difference on the pricing of the sustainable product between Europe and Asia. In Europe, there is certain push from the people that they prefer sustainable product, so they're willing to pay a little bit more premium. But in Asian side, it is not. We have to actually compete with virgin resin, like which are petroleum-based product. So this is a huge challenge that we face, that the price index is very tough in Asia because everybody's profit margin is also very tight. So this is the unfortunate reality today. But there is another problem that is coming in this part of the world. Number one is the product, some of the products are not designed for recyclability. Like during the coffee time, I was mentioning that when we have the bottle, we can recycle it. But when it is a multi-layer sachet, then it is very difficult to recycle. It's not recyclable. So now with the economic situation, people are switching from bottle to sachet. So people are buying 3 taka sachet instead of the bottle. So the non-recyclable portion is increasing. So that is also putting a huge pressure on the recyclable cost. Number 2 is when you discard, if it is too soil, then it's very difficult to recover. The cost of recycling goes up. And another problem is this industry is not recognized as an industry. So it is pretty much informal and underground. So that is another problem. It is not socially recognizable. The workers do not get any social recognition. And also, due to this fact that waste management and recycling not recognized, we have certain issue on the tax and VAT issue. Because it is treated as an industrial raw material, so you are subject to 5% AIT and 7.5% VAT. So the waste collectors, how would you collect 12.5% from them? So that is also becoming a huge challenge. So for that reason, I think the cost a lot of time goes up, but on the other hand, the pricing is very sensitive in this part of the world. So getting a premium or providing a premium is also a huge challenge. So we do not expect any premium, but if we get the premium, I think the recycling rate will go up very high in Bangladesh. That's what I believe.
Do you experience the same in Ghana, like with your experience in other countries?
Yeah, no, I see exactly what the challenge is, and I think it is not, maybe it's not the most popular thing to say, but I think we really need to redefine what we see as profit and what we see as wealth. Yesterday I was going through news, and you know, we are talking about energy crisis and all those things, and prices are spiking up and all those things. But then if I read that all these companies are making billions of profit, then I'm asking myself, are we doing the correct thing? Are we looking at, are we charging the right people on all these things? And then now we are focusing on, specifically in developing and emerging markets, we are dumping all the challenges to them. They have to pay a premium, they have to, but then many people don't have decent jobs, so how can they do that? Whereas we have this let's say the old industry making so much money. So I think we need to have this conversation with all of us that, okay, how are we going to tackle this? Otherwise,
with social
at the end of
business.
it, yes, because I just wanted to say this, because I think one of the things that we forget is that we are all in the first place citizens before you are an employee of a company. And I think we forget that when we go into our company, that we forget that when we go home, we are citizens, and all the problems is also affecting us. And I think that conversation needs to be held. And many of these events will also contribute towards it. And I think mixing it also with different people from different parts of the world gives that movement that we are looking for.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you. I think we had like a very nice impulses from this morning session. Do you have anything to add, some messages that came up to your mind whenever somebody else was talking on this? I think like, yeah, it was very like a nice flow, like touching every single point. Do we have questions from the audience? Otherwise, I do have a question for a question for you. If you had like, 'cause these 2 days, right? We have like a lot of young minds, brilliant minds. Some of them students, some entrepreneurs from Bangladesh, from all over the world. We have 500 people connected as well. If you had to suggest to younger generations today some actions, like if we have to launch a call to action to people, like and connecting it to waste, and how can we really build a circular economy starting from the young generations and a zero waste world? What would that be? I start with whoever is ready, with Mahenas.
I think what I keep trying to emphasize on is the fact that in this generation and time and age, we really need to be conscious about our consumption. We're moving into a time where everything is so limitless, but we don't understand that how limited the resources are to produce them. And I think that just goes back to understanding whether it's clothes, whether it's, you know, consumer products such as like everything that is plastic based and stuff. If we just kind of reel back and understand that what is the impact that I'm making and how can I really bring about a change, you can like reach out to people. So my advice to the youth would be like really dig deep into the stuff that you're wearing, who they're being made by, what kind of actions they're taking within their factory, whether it's clothes, whether, you know, they're paying their laborers properly or not. Do they have minimum wage? Do they have healthcare facilities? I know we don't have access to information as readily available in Bangladesh, but if you do try to find information, it is available, at least through some digging. And it's important to wear and buy products that matches your value system. And I think if you can start digging deeper into what is your value system and what you connect to, and I think you, as every individual, we will be better and conscious consumers, and that will eventually reduce down the immense need for constantly consuming. I can't really speak for the part where, in terms of like responsible production, because that's a very enormous, gigantic like sphere. So as a consumer myself, that's something that I would like to give away to the younger generation. So yeah, just be mindful of what you consume and where you're buying it from. Thank you.
So get informed and buy products where you really like see the value behind, like the value chain behind, and the social and environmental value behind. I see, Adam, you had raised your hand, and I also see a hand in the audience now.
Yeah, so in Aotearoa we have a concept called kaitiaki, which is about indigenous concept about looking after the land and protecting the environment around us. So I think it's, you know, we need to think of this as our responsibility and something that, you know, we are all responsible to do, we're all responsible to think about. But I think it's also important that we don't put too much pressure on ourselves, because we can't do everything, you know, and I think it's really important that we all do the best we can and we're conscious about it and we do what we can when we can, but we don't beat ourselves up for not being perfect, and we don't expect perfection from ourselves, because we're all at different stages in our life, whether age, whether money, whether we're, you know, where we're at in our lives, that allow us to be able to make those decisions. So I think, you know, take that responsibility on board, know that you have to be doing something, but don't feel the weight of the world on your shoulders and that you have to do everything perfectly or you're a bad person, would be my message.
Thank you so much. Do we have an answer here on the audience, a call to action? Otherwise we get the question from the audience. Mustafez, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. This is a very interesting conversation because I can hear from different perspectives from different actors and players. At the starting of the conversation, you said when you were working at Unilever, you didn't find producer who can actually offer sustainable products. But in this panel session, we can see we have two producers, one who is working in the supply chain, one is creating or developing product that can be alternative to the toothpaste packaging. But the problem is money is not there. Money is the producers. Producer who is actually producing the plastic. So why this is happening? I just want to ask. I have another question. I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time. The question is to the producer, or maybe even to the producer like Fahim Bhai, or maybe Adam can answer that as well. Like, why money is not going to their plate or their space so that they can produce alternative plastic product rather than producing plastic sachet which technically we are saying we are recycling plastic, but I'm sorry, you are trying to recycle plastic, alternative plastic product, but this is less than 10% of what plastic is going to the market actually. You're throwing like out of 100% of the plastic, only less than 10% are recycled. So this is also a problem. So how companies like BPCL can actually push Unilever or companies like that so that they can focus more of recycling plastic from the market. Yes, we like to do commitments, like in COP26 and COP27, we have seen commitment aren't met. So how we can like push companies like, please focus on your commitment, make sure that you're meeting on the commitment, and please don't blame to the consumers, because similar to the cigarette company, we like to blame the consumers, but this is not helping us at all. And we are feeling like kind of guilty as a consumer, but I can see there's no alternative here. So I have a question to Fahim Bhai, representative from BPCL, and also Adam can answer why money is not there. Thank you.
The answer would be the power is with the consumer. If you decide you are not going to buy the cheap plastic products, you will pay premium for the recycled materials. The companies will shift their packaging to mix or recycled containers. So if we as a consumer, we are not aware, we are buying everything that is offered to us, let it be plastic, or they use plastic because they believe that this is cheaper and this helps them to cater to a larger audience or larger consumer. So as a consumer, the power is within us to decide which product to buy and which one not to. So that's how you can pressurize the manufacturers, and also there has to be policies and follow-up of these policies, extended producer responsibility, environmental tax, etc., etc. There are a lot of financial tools which can be used to give subsidy to companies like BPCL or Garbage Man or any other who are trying to create the impact of their production or their waste, right? So that's one. I think that's how I would like to answer that.
Thank you for the question. It's a very fundamental question. I think what Fahim said is absolutely correct. It is the responsibility of everyone. And in Bangladesh or in this part of the world, it's a very price-sensitive market. If you can sell it cheaper, you win. And we have seen it over and over again. That's what I was saying, that now from a bottle of 100 taka, 3 taka sachet is more popular. That is very important. And now if you look at even the noodles market, 10 taka, 15 taka noodles packet are selling a lot more than the bigger package. So one side is the consumer. Due to various reasons, we want to buy if it is possibly cheaper products. So on the other hand, similar message goes to the manufacturer that we have to make it the product much cheaper. So for that reason, they tend to go for not for designing something which are recyclable, but which is cheaper in the market, that they can get better value or more sale. So these are the two components are playing simultaneously this part of the world. But if you see other part of the world where in the economics, we've seen that sustainable products, people are willing to pay more. So that pressure is coming onto the company, and in Europe, the companies are willing to pay more for the recycled product. And if you notice that there is a law component of it too, like in Europe, in 2025, all plastic products must have 25% recycled component. And in 2030, 30%. That is also pushing the companies to buy more and more recycled product, changing their design so that they can take recycled component into their product. So ultimately the pressure has to come from the consumer. If the consumers start demanding that sort of product, I'm sure that the manufacturer will design with recyclability and also incorporate more and more recycled stuff and willing to pay premium for it. Thank you. Does that answer your question?
No, yes, maybe I actually, the last remark that you said is something that is actually, for me, worrying me. Because I see, for instance, in Europe, a lot of policies coming up where they say by 2025 do this, 2030 doing this. But what I'm seeing is that it is not coordinated worldwide. So my fear is that yes, they may achieve that in Europe, but then they dump it now in Africa, in Asia. And I can give you an example, and I think that is the dilemma that we are facing. So also to answer your question is that the pressure should also come from European consumers, that they should also say not only at our backyard, but also in Africa and in Asia. Otherwise, I see that with automobiles. In Europe, they are saying, okay, from this and this year, you need to have only electric cars. So you would assume, and what is now happening, they are now investing in Africa, but they are doing fossil fuel vehicles. So then at the end of it, then the question is, you are just shifting the whole issue, but the problem will then still be remaining for the world. So I think there we really need to dive in a bit more and push more that everybody will do it. I think it's like COVID. When COVID happened, the whole world was behind it and we were able to find solutions. So why couldn't we do that with recycling and all those things? There must be a will, both for communities as well as governments, as well as these multinationals that are producing all these products.
Thank you so much. I think you gave an amazing answer altogether, and I want to answer from my side as well with two frustrations and one happiness, if I want to say. One frustration is exactly why I left Unilever, is because at the end of the day was just you had to have a positive plan at the end of the year. You could have a project. We were working on many projects at the international level to help communities in the Global South. These projects were stopped because they were just CSR things, and sometimes just, they were not profitable in the end. So we were trying to build social businesses inside the company, but at the end of the day, you do have these pressures. And that's also why a policy can make a big difference, but you have big lobbies out there because unfortunately, you don't have enough capacity at global level to get the same price with these new technologies. And this was my first frustration. The second frustration is exactly what you're saying. So we were at Davos 2 weeks ago, and we see all of these coalitions, let's make collective actions, and governments sitting at the table, but it was just the elite of the world sitting in this village, in the mountains, not accessible, not involving the Global South in all of these decisions. So I'm wondering how can we have this coordination at global level, because these two are really two big frustrations that are there. So my happiness is to see you all, because you show that there is a way at systemic level. There is a lot of people working on it, but still the system in general, it's still creating the problem. So how can social business, my question is, and I saw a hand at the end, how can social business help this change in the system? If you want to answer, otherwise we can also...
So, when we try to solve environment... It's a volunteer activity, or we should highly depend on grants. But the challenge is in garbage man, we are trying to make it financially viable with all the challenges that we face. We are providing our workers the equal pay, the logistics are good, and whatever we're trying to do has to make financial sense. That's how social business, because when I started, I had no idea about anything. So attending this and understanding social business, how this structure works, helped me to move forward towards the financial feasibility of garbage man now. So it has to make sense in terms of number. You cannot highly depend on grants or funding that will just be there for like CSR funding or anything. The business has to make the financial numbers work, right? So, yeah.
Yes.
Hello, hi. Yeah, so I have one question. The answer that you guys were giving was the consumers have to more aware, right? Which is absolutely true. But in order to be to aware the consumers and make them more active, the company has to launch campaigns, marketing campaigns. They have to change the supply chain for the recycling, getting the recycling bottles. So the recycling bottles might be cheap, but the extra overhead cost will be bigger, right? As a whole. Hence, the product price will be a bit bigger. And as a consumer, if I don't have the accessibility of getting a recycled product from the market, if I have to go to 10 places to find one product, how will I do that? Why will I do that? At the same time, it's not the consumers, if 10 million consumers are aware, you make the changes. But if you go to the hierarchies and tell the company that you have to cut down 20 to 30% less profit to upgrade this, to aware this, it's more easier for them to do it, and it's more effective for the global scenarios of recycling. So why aren't all the corporations who are based on recycling more focusing on the big corporations such as Transcom, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Kinley, right? Rather than focusing on their consumers, if that's more effective. And why are the corporations cut down their profits to 20 to 30% of what they're making? At the same time, why will the government, well, if they're making less profit, that means that's less tax for the country, right? Why will the government earn less tax for the country in order to promote the product? I know I took it in a very bigger scale, but awareing the consumers, millions and millions of consumers is more difficult than awareing one company, right? So what's there? Thank you.
I think you have said it. It's a complex situation, and I think the starting point that I think we all are saying is that it starts with us. As an individual, you can make one step, and then if we all make the one step, we will achieve it. And again, I repeat it, we shouldn't say corporates, individuals and others, because in the corporates, there are individuals working that are our fathers, our mothers, uncles and all those things, and they come back with the same challenges. So I think we need to do it together as the human nature, human beings that are living on this earth, because we have only one earth. So I think that conversation is now starting, and we need to move it where you see businesses doing it. We are calling it social businesses, but actually coming 10 years, 15 years, this will become the mainstream businesses. And I think that is something that we need to take it as moving forward as we are going.
I think no better words to close this panel, because I know we're running out of time, but you see Fahim, Kadim and Richard, they're here today, I think. So if you have any other questions, more than happy, I think everyone is to answer. So with this, thank you so much for all the insights. I think we could continue in a circular way, with a lot of questions and comments, but I leave the floor for the next panel. Thank you so much, everyone.